Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and tonight I would like to talk about a topic that is occasionally discussed on the internet. It's usually phrased in the form of a question, and it goes something like this. Where are all the Japanese horror movies nowadays? You'll hear this brought up sometimes on a message board, or maybe a Facebook page, or a comment section on a YouTube video. I've actually discussed and addressed this question already in my video entitled The Death of J-Horror, How Everyone Got It Wrong. I will include a link to that video in the description box below. Most of your questions will be answered there. In that discussion, I pointed out that Japan continues to release a variety of horror films, many of which are available to international audiences with English subtitles. However, that video was posted, I think like 3 years ago at this point, and since that video, I have made an additional observation in terms of the industry that is rather concerning, I think. But it will help us to understand some of the distribution trends of Japanese horror films in recent years. So I think it's an important issue and topic that we need to keep in mind, and that is what we will be discussing tonight. So here is my observation, the big observation, okay? Historically, there have always been ways that an American, for example, could watch Japanese horror films. There are streaming services, physical media options, both in terms of rentals and purchases. We actually had 3 or 4 DVD mail rental services back in the day that were actually focused entirely on Asian cinema. It was like Tiger Cinema, eHit, and Cineflix, I believe. All 3 of those services are gone now. Due to the death of physical media, really, or the decline of the volume of physical media. And even if you were looking for a film, though, that was very difficult to find after you exhausted your rentals and your whatever, you could frequently purchase a Region 2 DVD directly from Japan, using websites like Yes Asia, CD Japan, Amazon Japan, etc. The problem with that option, though, is that it's the most expensive option because physical media in Japan is generally more expensive than physical media in the United States in general. And also, 99% of the time, those Region 2 DVDs or even Blu-rays in Japan don't have English subtitles. So that's a problem. So that was like your last option, your last resort after all of your other options were exhausted. What I've been seeing in recent years is that this last resort option has now become the number one option. So if you want to keep up with Japanese films that have been released over the past half decade, say 2016 to 2021, you need to really rely on physical media from Japan. Now, we're going to get into sort of the implications of this and some of the explanations that we might have of this, but let's just look at the numbers that I'm seeing here. So as a case study, I analyzed basically every Japanese horror film that I have seen that had release dates from like 2016 to 2021. I compiled a little list of titles. Then, just the other day, I did a search on the internet in terms of availability to be up to date on things, and this is what I found. Now remember, we're only talking about Japanese horror films released from 2016 to 2021 in its home country, that also have some kind of availability. So this is what we got here. On Netflix, okay, it's like the biggest rental service in the United States, okay, and it has worldwide influence as well. There are 2 Japanese horror films on Netflix USA. Just 2 on the entire website. You got Ju-on Origins, which is kind of a mini-series, but the length of which you could count it as a film, kind of. And then we have Homunculus, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed both of those. But 2 on the entire website. Then I'm like, okay, let me look at Shudder. Let's see what they got going on. Well, they also have 2 Japanese horror films on the entire website. And this is like one of the premier horror streaming services in the United States. And on there we have One Cut of the Dead, great film. And Sadako versus Kayako, it's watchable. 2 on the entire website. I need to emphasize this. Then we have Amazon streaming, okay? There's probably more than what I identified, but I identified 8. So this is a little bit better on Amazon streaming. You could watch Yami Douga 14, Yami Douga 15. I think the titles, the American titles are Tokyo Videos of Horror or something like that. You got Kidan, Piece of Darkness, which is a good film. Creepy from Kiyoshi Kurosawa. Vampire Clay, which is kind of a neat little film. Meatball Machine Kodoku, which is quite entertaining. Ghost Squad from Noboru Iguchi, I think he directed that. And Howling Village from Takashi Shimizu. So, okay, a little bit better from that website. I saw one on Tubi that was brutal from 2017, I think. That was a really nasty horror film that I reviewed in a separate video. And then there's a few you could find on YouTube. You know, YouTube's kind of a gray zone. Sometimes it's legal, sometimes it's not, but you can keep it up there as long as nobody cares. And I saw Haunted Campus and Bloody Chainsaw Girl on YouTube. All region DVDs, usually Malaysian. You got Hellgirl 2019, which I really enjoyed. Sadako 2019, which wasn't very good. And then both Tokyo Ghoul films. You got 4 on that. In terms of American physical releases on DVD and Blu-ray, there's 2. Well, actually, it's one release with 2 films. Corpse Prison 1 and 2. And then Hong Kong Region 3 release, Dokumushi Toxic Insects. All right. So it looks like we got a pretty decent, number of Japanese horror films from the last 5 years that are available on legal English-friendly sources. Now, I intentionally avoided overlap in these figures. Like, One Cut of the Dead is available everywhere. It's on Shudder, Amazon, YouTube, Vudu, and physical media. So I just counted it once for Shudder there. But the bottom line here is that we have 22, I believe, Japanese horror films that had release dates from 2016 to 2021 that are currently available through a variety of English language sources. Again, not a terrible selection, pretty good. On its surface, it looks okay. And there are some legitimately entertaining films in that batch there. I mean, I think One Cut of the Dead is a high priority. Hellgirl is a high priority. I really enjoyed that. I have separate reviews for both of those. I reviewed Brutal on my channel. I like that if you're into that type of film. Meatball Machine Kodoku, I think I reviewed on my channel separately. That one's interesting. Ju-on Origins was worth watching. I reviewed that. Anytime I watch a good Asian horror film that I really like, I usually do a separate review. Kidan, Piece of Darkness, I don't think I did a review of that one, but that one's good. Bloody Chainsaw Girl and Homunculus are worth watching as well. But here's the problem. All right, you think things are going okay, right? Here's the problem. In my opinion, a fan of Japanese horror films who wants to kind of watch everything that's worth watching, or at least high profile enough to be worth a watch, would need to seek out an additional 21 films, all right, from Japan-only sources. That means Region 2 DVD with no subtitles, all right, if you want to keep up with recent releases from the industry. And I'll include titles for all of these in the description box below so you can see it. But let's take a look at some of these. Okay, we're talking 21 movies on Region 2 DVD, not available anywhere else. All right, at least English language friendly. So that's not very good, guys. It's not good. But here are some highlights. You're probably thinking, oh, these are like obscure films. Maybe they don't reserve English language releases. No. These deserve them. All right, so let's look at the first one here. I reviewed this on my channel. It Comes from Tetsuya Nakashima. This is a big-time director. This is his first full-blown horror film as well. Now, I reviewed this separately on my channel. Check out the review. Why does this not have a release? This is a 2018 film. Nakashima's last 4 films got releases. All right? Kamikaze Girls got a release in the U.S. Memories of Matsuko got a release. That might be a UK release, but still. Confessions got a release. And World of Kaneko got a release. It Comes out. Oh, we're not going to release that one. I don't understand why. I just don't. I mean, I think most fans of Japanese horror definitely want to watch this, that's for sure. Fans of the director will want to watch it. And I think most fans of Japanese horror will enjoy this. I think it's a good flick. So there's one example. Why it doesn't have a release, I have no idea. All right, here's another big one. All right, Mimicry Freaks from 2019. This is a really interesting one. This one's like a callback to Japanese horror films from like the late 80s and 90s. They're like more violent. You have a little bit of like a mad science vibe sprinkled in, some folklore sprinkled in. Really cool flick. I just watched this the other night for the first time. And good news I've heard is that this could get a release within the next month. All right, so I'm not 100% sure on that. I think right now you could pre-order it on deep discount, but I'm not seeing it on Amazon or anywhere else right now. So I think it was announced that it's coming out in the next month, but I don't know. It feels a little dodgy to me. But still, if this does get a release, check it out. It's a must-watch. Really cool flick. All right. We get another one that's my most highly anticipated Japanese horror film of the last decade. Roku Roku, The Promise of the Witch. I did a review of this. Yokai Monster Madness. All right. I really enjoyed this. I'm going to watch this every October, probably forever. All right. It'll be a yearly watch for me. Very oddball film. But again, anyone who's remotely interested in Japanese horror or yokai monsters and folklore are going to watch this. I mean, the story's very thin, but who cares? You know what I mean? It's really fun to watch. Now, this isn't even available on most of your normal websites. It's not on Yes Asia. It's not on CD Japan. You have to buy it on Amazon Japan, and you got to be lucky enough to find a seller that will send it to your country. You know, and even then, I paid out my butt to get this. I mean, this was really expensive, but I really wanted to watch it, right? So this is really tough to find. I don't even count this as a release. That's how tough to find it is. Why would no one release this in the United States in 4 years? This is a 2017 film. What are we waiting for? Like, how long are you going to wait to distribute this? It makes no sense to me. Here's another one that's a huge priority. All right, Liverleaf. This is from director Eisuke Naito, who is, in my opinion, the most interesting Japanese horror director to emerge from the last 10 years. All right, he directed Puzzle from 2014, which also does not have an English language release yet. But I did see... Malaysian releases are I kind of count them. Puzzle has a Malaysian release that just hit eBay recently. So if you have not seen Puzzle from 2014, go on eBay and buy it right now. All right, the all-region DVD with English subs. It's one of the best horror films of 2014, in my opinion. But I'm not counting that as a U.S. release, okay? And then you have Liverleaf here from 2018. Again, another must-watch if you're interested in Japanese horror. Not released in the U.S. I mean, why would they, right? Really none of Eisuke Naito's films have gotten a legitimate release, with the exception of The Crone, which is one of the funniest Japanese horror films of the last, of all time. So really, all of this guy's films are worth watching. And if you want to watch them, you got to buy these expensive Region 2 DVDs. So this one's a Region 3 Taiwanese, that's kind of a cheat. If you could find a Region 3 Taiwanese DVD without subtitles, it's going to be like half as expensive as the Japanese release. So, but still, there's no English-friendly release of this. Why? This movie's good, man. It's set in the winter months. It's violent. It deals with bullying. I mean, what are we doing? That's a 2018 film. Here's a 2019 film, Stare. Now this one, it's called Shirai-san. I'll include, again, in the description box, the titles. Okay, this is more of like, if you're a fan of like the supernatural Japanese films of the 2000s, late 90s, this is like up your alley, but it's good quality. It's got some good folklore to it, urban legend stuff. The entity is creepy, like the design of it. And it's a good flick. Good flick. Good quality. So, again, how this doesn't have a release, I don't know. This needs a release. Stare. Then we have one that's kind of oddball. You got Ghostmaster. All right, from 2019. It's kind of a horror comedy. Really entertaining, though. It's got some Evil Dead references in it, I think, and some other stuff. This is a fun movie. It's got some good death scenes, and the comedy works. You see the type of variety that we got here? These aren't all Sadako 3D films, folks. There's a nice little variety of films, and nobody is distributing them. Here's another one. Signal 100 with Kana Hashimoto. Alright, now this one, it's a death game film. Japan's made a lot of death game films. You know, bunch of students trapped in a building or a school. They got to kill each other off until one survives. You know, battle royale-like. But this one's a little different because it deals with hypnotism. And all the students have been hypnotized, and when they see a certain signal, do a certain thing, observe something that's a trigger, they kill themselves. So the goal in the film is to identify all of the signals, all right, and use those to manipulate people to kill themselves with the hypnosis and be the last one to survive. It's a fun movie. It's got some good death scenes, very nicely paced. Not released in the US. Here's one from 2016, folks. It's been 5 years. Snow Woman, Yuki Onna. Alright. 2016. This is the similar story to what you saw in Kidan, way back in the 1960s. And Ghost Story of the Snow Witch, which was also released in the late 60s. Even Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, did a remake of this. And this is a very popular legend in Japan. This one is from 2016. It's very low-key, more of like a dramatic horror. Like the horror is thematic. Very good quality film, though. Look at some of the critic reviews of this that the few critics who have seen it really enjoyed it. You know, most of these movies got actually pretty good reviews from critics. So again, this needs a release. This is more of an art house film. It's more artsy-fartsy, glacially paced, but still. I think a lot of people who like this story would want to watch it. Now here's one that's kind of a lower quality film. Alright, but it's still must watch because of the director. Innocent Curse from Takashi Shimizu. 2017 film. Again, this was released 4 years ago. A Takashi Shimizu horror film released 4 years ago that doesn't have a US or an English-friendly release anywhere. What are we doing? I mean, the critics hated this, and it has one of the worst villains in horror film history. In terms of, like, decent budgeted horror film history, the villain in this is just pathetic. Not scary at all. But you have a solid lead actress, some good stylization, and it's kind of quirky. Almost like it's trying to be humorous, but not. You know, it's an oddball film. Most people wouldn't like it, all right? But I did. I'm going to have to do a review of this at some point. And, yeah, I think this is definitely, it's a must-watch given the director. No one's released it. Here's one that kind of flies under the radar. So I'm not sure if this really is a required release type thing. But we got The Black Maiden, Q&A. All right, so it's like a 2-part film. The cool thing about these is that they run concurrently with each other. So you'll watch the Q, which I think Q&A must reference question and answer, I'm thinking. So you watch the Q version first. It's about a girl who's adopted by a family and crazy stuff starts happening. And there's some holes in the Q movie. Some stuff that doesn't make sense or that isn't resolved. And then you watch the A version, the answer version. And the events basically overlap. But they use different perspectives and stuff to fill in the gaps and conclude the story. I liked them. You know, the first film's a little slow, but it picks up. I like these. Definitely worthy of release. You know what I mean? I don't see why you wouldn't release these. We got another one from Eisuke Naito. Dorome. Girls' side and boys' side. Okay? Now, this is another one similar to Black Maiden. And you basically have a bunch of students are at a school and crazy supernatural shenanigans occur. So you watch both films, all right? They take place concurrently. They overlap. But one film is from the girl's perspective. The other film is from the boy's perspective. And if, again, just like Black Maiden, they fill in the gaps each other and you see different sides. It's entertaining, you know? Why is this not released? Eisuke Naito, somebody needs to start releasing his stuff, man. I don't know who's responsible in Japan. You gotta get international distribution. The dude's probably the most exciting new Japanese horror director, and nobody's watching his films because you guys over there suck at getting that out to the international audience. I'm just being real here. Get off your asses and release this stuff. And then we got The Stare, all right, which not to be confused with Stare from 2019. This one is from 2016, and the Japanese title is Nozokime, all right? This is not as good as Stare from 2019, but it's, a good supernatural horror film that's worth watching. All right, and there's a few other films here. You got Hana Dhamma Phantom from Hisayasu Sato, which is like a big-time exploitation director. Again, Hana Dhamma Phantom, they released it in the United States. Hana Dhamma Origins, they released from 2014. Hana Dhamma Phantom comes out in 2016. Oh, we're not going to release that, though. I'm not understanding this. All right? And again, this is a recent problem. I'm gonna get to that. But why? I don't get it. And then we have, finally, another Eisuke Naito film called Lichi Hikari Club from 2016, which is about like a cult that builds a robot to kidnap girls to bring it back to their lair so they can sacrifice them. All right? So there's a lot of interesting stuff coming out, guys. And some of this stuff is must-watch material, but it's not hitting the United States. Now, there are some lowlights, all right? Corpse Party 2, Book of Shadows, not very good. Vampire Night, The Exorcist Nurse, Occult Bolshevism, which, no. And then Stigmatized Properties, which was directed by Hideo Nakata, so that should get a release. But not very good, and in my opinion, Nakata's kind of a has-been at this point, but still, that needs a release. So let's put this all into context, all right? I did a quick survey of like my physical media collection, as well as some movies that I've covered in my Asian horror movie review playlist. And I would say that I've covered approximately like 50 or so Japanese horror films that are only available on Region 2 DVD from Japan, all right? I'm not counting like the bargain bin trash films that I buy at Book Off in Japan for 500 yen. No, those are films that really no one's going to care about. And, this is total over, like, the entire history of Japanese cinema. Maybe just 50 films that I've seen on Region 2 DVD that count. In total, I've seen, like, over 450 Japanese horror films. So 50, or 450 divided by 50, it's close to about 1 out of every 10 films. Okay, so that means that 90% of Japanese horror movies that need to be seen to keep up with the industry have historically been released in English-friendly releases. All right, with English subtitles at some point over the last 20 years. Now compare that to what I just showed you here. From 2016 to 2021, I first gave you a list of 22 Japanese horror films that are available. Okay, English language friendly releases. And then I just gave you a list of 21 Japanese horror films that are only available on Region 2 DVD without subs. So out of the total 43 films, about half of them have no English friendly release. So we've gone from like 90% English friendly availability, international availability, down to about 50% over the last 5 years. Now that is atrocious in terms of trends of distribution. All right? And I know, historically, you usually have to wait a few years until they hit internationally. This isn't 2005, guys. It's not 2010. All right, when physical media was king. This is 2021. Streaming is king now. If you can't distribute your film, like internationally streaming within like a year or like a year and a half of like your theatrical release, you're doing something wrong, dude. All right? There's no beating around the bush here. This is a pathetic distribution trend. Now, nobody's going to be a nutcase like me and, drive an old car into the ground just so they have a little extra money to buy these expensive Japanese DVDs without subtitles, all right? I can't really expect, like, your average movie fan to be doing this. It's kind of ridiculous that I have to do this. And these stats don't even include the Japanese horror films from the last 5 years that I know have been made and have been released in, like, film festivals, but still have no release, even in Japan. You know what I mean? Here's The Eye's Dream from Hisayasu Sato from 2016, which is why it took me so long to release my 2016 Asian horror movie review playlist videos. I was waiting for that film. I figured, oh, in 5 years it'll get a release somewhere. No, it never did. Okay. Bami from 2017, which I did review on my channel because that's the only film in the last 6 years that I actually requested a screener for because I wanted to watch it so bad. That's the only reason I got to watch that. Still not released anywhere, not even Japan. Okay, at least anywhere that I've seen in Japan. Ghost Mask Scar from 2018. I've read some good critic reviews of it from the film festivals. Nowhere to be found. And Roku Roku, Promise of the Witch, that kind of counts in this too. Because if, try to buy that movie at a reasonable price, you're not going to find it anywhere for a reasonable price. Practically impossible to find. All right? Now, in 15 years, I've been following Japanese horror films. I've never seen distribution this bad. It's just gotten horrible the past few years. I've never seen it this bad. So I asked myself, what's the cause of this? Like many things in life, it's probably multiple things that are contributing to it. It's usually not just one thing, right? So I contacted a few people, on the down low, instant messaging, email, trying to figure out if anybody had an opinion on this. And one Japanese director actually responded to me on this, and they said their observation was kind of interesting because they said that some Japanese filmmakers, producers, etc., whoever owns the rights, they actually avoid contacting international streaming sites like Netflix or Shudder because they just assume that their film is going to get buried in the library. All right, so they'll be like, oh, I could sell whatever my film distribution into Shudder or Netflix US, but it'll get buried under all of the other horror films. Okay, that's kind of what the observation that was given to me. Okay, especially if you don't have a strong distributor who can push the film. I can understand that, but I'm not sure, number one, if that's actually true, because as we've seen, Netflix has 2 Japanese horror films on the entire freaking website. Actually, one of them is a miniseries. So a third Japanese horror film is going to stick out like a sore freaking thumb. I mean, if anybody's just looking for it. And you know how websites are. A new Japanese horror film comes out, there are going to be a variety of YouTube channels, a few YouTube channels, a few websites that'll cover it. Give it a little play for you. Same with Shudder. They only have 2 Japanese horror movies on there. So, I mean, again, a third one would stick out like a sore thumb. So I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that. All right. Also, all right, I can understand there's more efficient distribution, less efficient distribution. Some ways your movie's going to get out to more people. Other ways it's going to get out to less people. But, if you have a Japanese film you're in control of, you're waiting 4, 5, 6, or 7 years to distribute it internationally. During that period of time, no one is watching your film. Right? So you could hold out if you want for this great distribution deal that you're waiting for, which may never happen. And in the meantime, no one is watching your film. Right? I'm not a filmmaker. I would assume that filmmakers make movies so people can actually watch them. So again, I don't know if I necessarily understand the benefits to this strategy. All right. So, and this observation is consistent with some other people that got back to me that, kind of told me that, word on the street is that the Japanese are a little bit, I guess, too demanding of international distributors, asking for too much, either in terms of licensing fees, for distribution or other various aspects of the negotiation, and some of the distributors back out after a while. All right, but we can't blame this probably entirely on the Japanese, right? I mean, I'm sure there's some distributors that maybe bought the distribution and are just sitting on the films for a while. That could be possible too, but I'm just kind of spitballing here in terms of what's different in 2021 compared to 5-6 years ago. Maybe, the Japanese are having trouble adapting to the streaming, aspect of things. I don't know. Whatever the deal is, I think we can kind of answer the question of the video, right? Where are all the Japanese horror films nowadays? Well, from the last few years, the answer is this. Half of them are still just sitting in Japan. just sitting around. All right? Whoever you want to blame for it, regardless, that's your answer. Half of them are just sitting in Japan, not being shown internationally. Even though there's a set fan base internationally for films like this. Makes no sense to me at all. All right? Someone needs to start releasing these films. You're telling me no one's going to like It Comes? No one's going to like Liverleaf or watch it? No one's going to watch Mimicry Freaks. I'm sorry. People are going to watch these. Roku Promise of the Witch? Are you serious right now? Of course people are going to watch that. So I don't understand it. It's kind of frustrating, as you can tell. But again, I'm just telling you what I'm seeing here. All right, so hopefully whatever the problems are start to be relieved a little bit in the next few years, and these films start getting out to, the places where people can very easily watch them for, not having to pay exorbitant costs to buy these freaking, DVDs from Japan, okay? So what I'm going to do is this, all right, because I have no choice at this point. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting, So I'm going to have to start covering these films regardless of what the distribution is like. As long as they have a Japanese release that I could get my hands on, I'll do more single reviews of them. Some of them I already did, like It Comes, Liverleaf, Roku, etc., Snow Woman. But I'm going to do some more in the upcoming weeks and months, probably in October too. I'll review some of these, like Mimicry Freaks. I gotta release, especially if it gets that English language, English subtitled release later in October. I'll definitely review that. Stare from 2019 I'll review, and maybe a few more. We'll keep up with it. So you may not be able to get to them immediately, but at least they'll be on your radar, so that if they do get a nice release in the US in the future, or even, it doesn't need to be US, it could be a UK release or an Australian release. Any English language release anywhere, would be a lot cheaper than ordering it from Japan. So, hopefully this is a temporary problem. In the meantime, though, you could check out my Asian horror playlist and my Death of J horror video. There's still tons of Japanese horror films. Even in recent years, we got a decent amount here, right, to check out and enjoy. So yeah, that's kind of the discussion I wanted to have tonight, and maybe just give you an idea of what I'm seeing here. So again, we're gonna have a nice October here with a lot of horror content and reviews, and as always, I will see you next time.